Hello YouTube friends, welcome back. This is part 2 of 3. I'm going to show you how I make this little hat with the ears that goes on my peg doll bunny. This is an intermediate level project, so if you have never done crochet before, you might find this a bit difficult and you may want to find a friend to help you who does crochet. Supplies you will need for this do-it-yourself DIY project. You'll need a peg doll. These are the ones I'm using, about 3.5 inches. They're called the lady style of peg doll. I guess the bottom looks like a dress because it's sloped like that. You might want to get yourself some sandpaper. You can correct mistakes or sand down flaws with the sandpaper. The yarn I'm using, I bought at Michael's. It is called Impeccable, and I just loved this color orange and the thickness of the yarn, so I chose this as my yarn to use for this project. A crochet hook. The hook that I used is 2.70 millimeters. And I found that is a very small hook and it's not so easy to use. However, I found if I went up in size, the little cap became too big for the doll's head. The size of the doll's head here isn't very big, so I wanted to get a nice round cap that fits well, and that hook was the one that worked best for me. We need scissors. And we need some needles. We're going to do a little bit of sewing here, so we need a yarn needle. This is the threader and the needle that we will use. And this set here you're looking at was my grandfather's sewing kit. And it's something it says there. It says, "A stitch in time saves 9." So if anyone knows what that means, please tell me in the comment section. I don't know what that means. And I really appreciate this sewing kit because my grandfather liked to sew. So it's quite nice to have that from him. Something else you will need is a hot glue gun for when we're done with the hat. I'm going to start with a magic circle. I will show you twice how I get this started. I use my hand and 3 fingers. I've learned this off someone else's video and it works for me, so I'll show you how I do this. I take my yarn here and I wrap it around 3 fingers, hold it down there with my thumb. Now come back up and cross over the first yarn and around the back. So do that again. Over these 3 fingers, down, up, cross, making an X. Over the 3 fingers, down, around, making an X there. And then I'm going to go around the back of my hand, and you will have 2 lines down the back of my hand with that X on that side. This is the beginning position that I have learned how to make the magic circle. Now from that position, take your crochet hook, go under the yarn closest to your fingertips, pull the other piece of yarn through. Now pause, and then you can come back to that yarn on the left and do a little twist around and pull through. That is the beginning of the magic circle, as I've learned from someone else's channel, and it works for me. So there's many different ways to learn how to do every stitch, and that's the way I've learned how to do this magic circle stitch. You can see how it tightens like that, but we're going to leave it loose for now and work into the middle of this circle. You know, crochet, if you have crocheted before, you know it usually starts in chains. This project is going to start just working straight into that opening there in the middle. In the middle of my circle, I am going to make 10 single crochets. This is my first one. I'll walk you through it step by step. A single crochet is you take your crochet hook and you put it into, we're going to put it straight into the middle. Line up our project here. Straight into the middle there of that circle. And we're going to take that yarn, pull it through the circle. Now we have 2 loops on the hook. We're going to come back, pull the yarn through those 2 loops. That was a single crochet. We'll do it again. Through the center, pull on the yarn. We have 2 loops on the hook. Pull through those loops. That was a single crochet. So we do this 10 times into the center of this circle. Through the circle, pull on the yarn. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Pull through those 2 loops. Through the circle, pull through 2 loops. Pull yarn through those 2 loops. Through the circle, pull the yarn through. Pull the yarn through the 2 loops on your hook. As I said, it's kind of hard to use this little hook, but it fits the head of that doll best with this yarn. It depends what yarn you're using. So I'm doing this 10 times, single crochet. I'll put in the description box the pages I like to learn from. There's the Crochet Crowd and the Crochet Guru. They're the pages where I learned how to crochet. Let's loosen this up a little bit. It's tough using this little crochet hook. So you can see you start to get a chain that has sort of arrows pointing upwards. You know, and you can count your stitches here because we want to make sure we got 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have to do 4 more to get 10 single crochets into the center of my magic circle. I didn't like the look of that one, so I loosened it up. That's a nice thing about knitting and crochet. You can just undo work and redo it. No problem at all. So through the center, pull your yarn through. You have 2 loops and pull yarn through those 2 loops. Through the loops. We're almost done. Take the hook through the center of the circle. Make sure you don't mix up the yarn threads here. That's the end of the circle, and then we have the yarn that's coming off the ball of yarn. Don't mix up those 2. You can see here how it's going to work when we tighten up the magic circle. You just pull on that and it tightens up nice. We're going to finish the circle, hold it together there with what was called a slip stitch. I just went through 1 stitch, pulled the yarn through and through the loop on my hook. So we've got a good circle started here. Now we are going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch. So we have 10 stitches, and this is going to make our project 20 stitches. We're going to double the size of this circle by putting 2 stitches into each stitch. So what is a stitch actually is remember I showed you that arrow. We need to go here under those 2 pieces of yarn that looks like an arrow pointing upwards. In there is where we put our first single crochet. Pull through the yarn and through the 2 loops and do again in the exact same spot. So don't move on to the next stitch. Stay in this stitch and put in 1 more single crochet. We're doubling the size of the circle. So 2 single crochets in that stitch. Now 2 single crochets in the next stitch. And I'll put the pattern in the description box of this video. That's my second time doing 2 single crochets. Now it might help to mark where you started. It can get confusing sometimes if we're doing these circles. You can get a bit mixed up on where you started and where you end. So one way to mark your circle is to take a contrasting piece of yarn and put it in the beginning of where you started. So I'm going to put this pink yarn right where I did my first stitch there. So when I get to the pink yarn, I will know that I've finished this round of putting 2 single crochets into every stitch. So that's just a marker there to help us remember. So back to where we were. I'm going to go to the next stitch underneath both pieces of yarn, pull through. Oops, I didn't do a very good job there. Pull it through. It's hard to use this little hook. We've got 2 loops and pull through those 2 loops. Again, in the exact same spot. There, we put 2 single crochets into 1 single crochet. Pull through those loops. Right again in the same spot. On to the next one. Single crochet. Right back through, pull the yarn through, pull through the 2 loops. All we're doing is single crochets in this whole project. Next stitch, pull through, and through the 2 loops. Same spot again. Pull the yarn through. You have 2 loops on your hook. Pull through both loops. Move on to the next stitch. Put our hook through under both pieces of yarn. Sometimes it can be hard. That's the trouble with the small hook. It makes things a bit tougher, but to do small projects, we need to work with a small hook. 2 single crochets to the next stitch. Put our hook through, pull the yarn through both loops. Back through the exact same stitch, pull through 2 loops. Now I believe we're on our last one. Through. Oh, we did a slip stitch there to finish up the circle. So every time I do one circle, I finish it with a slip stitch. So next circle, I pulled my magic circle tighter there. It has a pattern. It's going to be 2 single crochets into the first stitch, single crochet into the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. Again, the pattern will be in the description box below this video. I'm just tying a knot here into my magic circle. So the way to tie a knot in crochet is to just take a loop and pull the yarn right through. And then I'm going to cut that off. So I'm finished with that long end in the middle of the magic circle there. I no longer have to worry about getting that mixed up with the yarn from the ball of yarn, because sometimes they can get a little bit confusing having both. Now let's stop here and I'll show you, if you were to stop now, what this would look like on your peg doll. It fits the round head. However, it's not quite big enough. It needs at least one more round with my pattern. Now this next round, I'm going to put the marker in so we can remember where we started. It's going to create 27 stitches. Putting the 2 stitches and then 1 and 1 pattern into 20 stitches creates 27 stitches in the end. If you're someone who's crocheted before, that made sense. If you didn't, then I'm sorry if that was confusing, but that's how the pattern works. Once you get some practice at it, that makes sense. So let's start off on the last round here. We're going to put 2 crochets into this first stitch. Pull through both loops. Go right back into the exact same spot. Do 1 more single crochet. Make sure we have all the yarn. Things look best if you can keep your yarn kind of tidy and organized there on your hook. So right back into that same hole, 1 more single crochet through both loops. Now we're just going to do 1 single crochet into the next stitch and 1 single crochet into the stitch after that. So things start to move faster here on this round. Single crochet into this stitch. Now we're back to doing 2 single crochets into this next stitch. Pull the yarn through both loops, back into the same spot, pull the yarn through both loops. Now 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the next stitch again. See how fast it's moving now? Into the next one. Now we're back to 2 single crochets in there. 1, same spot, pull the yarn through both loops. Now 1 single crochet and 1 single crochet. In the end, we're going to have 27 stitches that we will have done here on this round. Back to the 2 single crochet in the exact same spot, another single crochet. So I'll show you where we are there, right back in there. Sometimes it helps to loosen up your project a bit there and make sure you're doing it right. Now 1 single crochet in the next stitch and 1 single crochet in the next stitch after that. Moving fast. Now 2 single crochets. Exact same spot, another crochet, single crochet through those 2 loops, and single crochet in the next stitch, and a single crochet in the next stitch. Hook through, pull the yarn through both loops. And 2 single crochets in this stitch. We're almost done. We're almost at that pink yarn marking our beginning. So now you can see why you want to mark it. It gets a bit confusing where you start and end. Putting a marker there keeps you from your project getting a bit lopsided, from not finishing your pattern. Pull it out now that I know where it should be. We do single crochet in there. And let's end this with a slip stitch. We just go through and pull through and pull through. So there weren't 2 loops there, there's 1. That was the slip stitch. Now I'm going to pause and check how this fits my doll's head. Here's my doll, and put it on there. The side that looks better is up. Now it fits, but it could use just 1 more row of single crochets. So I'm going to put 1 stitch in each stitch. So that's 27 single crochets to make my cap here just a touch bigger. So I'm going to put in my pink yarn here to mark the spot again, because I don't want to get lopsided and put in too many stitches. So that's going to mark my beginning, and we're just going to single crochet all around 1 more time to get a touch bigger to fit the doll better. So I'm going to put my hook through, pull the yarn through, and pull through the 2 loops. I'm going to do this 26 more times because there's 27 stitches. So I'm at the end of this row now. Here's my pink yarn marking where I started. So we're going to finish our last single crochet and pull the hook in, pull the yarn through. Not always so easy. Pull her through. Now we've got these 2 loops. And I'm going to pull that loop through the first loop. That was the slip stitch to end the project. Now, to put a knot in this, first I'm going to check it on the doll. Does it fit? Fits pretty good. We used the hot glue gun in the end to get it to really press down perfectly. So if it's a little bit loose there, the hot glue gun will hold it on tight. Looks pretty cute. All he needs is his ears, which we'll do next. Now to put a knot in this, I'm going to take my yarn, give it a bit of extra, maybe about 4 inches there, cut it with the scissors. Now just put your hook through that loop and get a hold of that yarn and pull it through, and that puts a knot in the end of the project. Pull her right through there. Pull it tight. There we go. Now we're going to thread this through a bit so it isn't hanging there loose. We're going to put it on the inside of the cap. Pull her through. A bit out of camera, sorry there. Pull it through again. Now to put a knot in it on the inside, what I do is I pull it through. I leave that loose. I don't pull it all the way through. I have that loop there. Now I'm going to go with my hook and grab the other end of the yarn. See that loop? Hang on to it and leave it loose there. Don't tighten it. Now I'm going to go in through another opening there. Grab the yarn with my hook again and pull it through a different opening, a different stitch I should call it. Now here you see I have my loop and my yarn on the inside of the cap. So if I come in and grab it and pull it through that loop and tug tight, we put a knot on the inside. So we pulled that yarn in, gave it a knot. It doesn't matter what the inside looks like because we are going to finish this off by gluing it onto the doll's head. No one will ever see the inside of this cap. Even the most destructive child will have a difficult time pulling the cap off this doll. To make the ears, we're going to start with a slip knot. And I'm going to show you several times how I do that. I use my thumb to make a loop like this, and I pull the yarn through, take my hook, and pull it tight. That's the slip knot. That's the beginning of most crochet projects. So we'll do it one more time slowly so you can see how I did that. I'm just going to give it a tug to undo it. There you go. Now, I take my thumb, I go from right to left, my right to my left. So it's like my thumb's wearing a little scarf there with the yarn crossing over. I just hold it, take my finger, and I'm going to pull the yarn through that loop. And then I take my crochet hook, give it a tug, hold both the yarn there, and that's a slip knot. It's the beginning of most crochet. There's tons of videos showing all kinds of different methods of how to do that. But this is how I like to do it. I use my thumb and it always works out pretty easy for me. Now we're going to chain 4. Now chain is just taking your hook, pull on the yarn, and pull it through that loop. 1 chain, 2 chains, 3 chains, 4 chains. That's 4. You can see the little loops there. Each is a stitch. Now I'm going to come to the one second from my hook. So not that one, but the next one. and I'm going to make a single crochet there. I'm going to put my hook through and pull through those 2 loops. I'm going to make another single crochet. So this is going to be 3 single crochets back through my chain that I just made. Pull through those 2 loops and 1 more. So this is the bottom of the bunny's ear. Right, so now I'm going to turn my project, tighten it up there a bit, and we're going to do 1 more row of 3 single crochets. Now I'm just going to go straight into the first stitch from my hook. I'm not going to skip one this time. I skip one the first because I just find it easier to start my project with a bit of a looser work there in the beginning, but now I don't need to. I go through that first stitch and pull through 2 loops there. Go into the next one under both pieces of yarn, pull through and pull through the 2 loops, and 1 more time through that stitch. I'm going to grab my yarn, pull it through. Now I have 2 loops on my hook, pull the yarn through those 2 loops. So that's 2 rows of 3 single crochets. Now we're going to turn the work 1 more time. And I'm going to do 1 last row. So this is 3 rows of single crochets. That's my second one in that row. And the last one. Again, I'm using the same hook I used for the bottom of the cap. Very small 2.7 millimeter hook. And tighten that up. Now we're going to start reducing. So I'm going to skip the first stitch. I'm not going to go into that first one. I'm going to go into the second one. Not that one, that one. So skip a stitch. So we're only going to put in 2 single crochets in this row. We're reducing down to make a triangle shape. You'll find all this in the description box. So pull through and hook onto that yarn and pull it through the 2 loops. So that's a single crochet and then 1 more single crochet. Get my hook in there, pull the yarn through. Kind of hard. We can do it. And then 1 more time. Now we're going to turn our work and do, again, we're going to skip 1 stitch and put in only 1 single crochet now in that end. 1 single crochet, and to make the top, tippity top of the triangle, I'm just going to pull the yarn through 1 time. There, we're done 1 ear. Now I'm going to cut this yarn with the scissors and pull it through that loop to make a knot on the end. But leave yourself a long tail, because we're going to use this yarn to stitch the ear onto the cap. So I won't show you making the next ear because it's identical, and we're going to go straight to stitching these onto the cap. So you could pause and rewind as many times as you want to make both ears. I just made them exactly the same. There you tighten, and so you've got these 2 long tails of yarn, and those are going to be used with the needle to sew this onto the bottom piece there. Now I'm going to get out my grandpa's sewing kit here and use the yarn needle. We'll thread it with the threader here. So we put the needle on top of that hole there. So that piece goes through the needle, and then the yarn goes through that hole to get the yarn onto the needle. So if I've done this right, the needle goes on first, and then you've got that hole there. The yarn's got to go through that hole, and then we give it a tug, pull the needle over both the metal and the yarn, and that just magically puts that yarn in and through your needle. Otherwise, I don't think you would ever get a yarn needle threaded. That's take you much longer than this took. There we go, the yarn on the needle. Now, to make my triangles here look a little bit better, I take my yarn and I pick whichever side doesn't look quite even, and I take this long piece and loop it back. So here, I give it a tug to straighten it up. I just decide whichever side needs a little bit more reinforcing, and I use this extra tail here to make my triangle look more perfect. There's always one side that looks like it needs a little bit more yarn to make it look straighter. So on this one, it's the one on your right. There. Just kind of pulling it through, loop around if I need to, or pull straight down. Give that one a little bit more yarn there to fill in a gap. And take it down to the bottom. So then we've got 2 tails at the bottom of the triangle. There you go. 2 different pieces of yarn at the bottom of this triangle, this bunny ear. And I put it on pretty much in the center. Often I'll take my doll like this just to make sure it's going to look good. I've had some that I had to undo because it didn't look quite right, but I try to make sure I got it in a spot where it will look good, kind of nicely, so it doesn't look like the bunny's lopsided or his head is uneven or something. So I just figure out where this ear is going to fit best and start putting my yarn through the cap and then through the triangle to stitch the triangle onto the cap. It's just that easy. Since all the yarn's the same color, it can't really go wrong here. I tug through and I'll come back up and go through the triangle to sew it onto the cap. Now remember, I still have one long loose piece of yarn on the left. That's going to be used later to reinforce this. Oops, I made a mistake there. There we go. And now I make sure it's lined up correctly. Take my stitch back through the triangle. And I'll go straight down into the cap to sew it onto the cap. Just trying to make this as strong as I can, so if a child gives it a tug, the ear won't come off. And the cap is hot glued onto the doll's head, so it should stay on. We go through the triangle and back down. I just keep tightening and lining up stuff to get it looking right. Okay, and it's getting stronger with every stitch. Now I'm going to check it on the bunny. Looks good. You want to make sure you've got it right before you tie the final knot. Once you've tied the final knot, this thing is on this cap pretty good. Now, to tie the final knot, we're going to need our crochet hook again. So I take the yarn off the needle there. Next step is a crochet hook step. And to finish off the cap, I just took this tail of yarn on the left. I pulled it through with a crochet hook and tied a knot on the inside. I did that again with the other ear to finish off our bunny ears. Our final step is to hot glue. Use the hot glue gun to glue the cap onto the doll. So I just figure out how it looks, make sure I got it right, make sure I've got the right side facing front, because once you get this hot glue on, you can't undo it. And I always glue on the front first and then I glue on the back. So just double check. Put on some glue. Don't take too long here. Pick up the cap and get it on the doll. Give it a press. And then I do the back. And that's the final step of the cap. So there's one more part to this. This is a second part of 3 videos showing how I made this Easter craft. The next video is going to show how I make the little bag, the carrier bag that the doll has to go with it. And I will show that in the next video. So if you're watching this the day it's posted, this will be uploaded tomorrow. Today's a Tuesday, tomorrow will be Wednesday. And if you're watching this in the archives, it will be the next, should be the next video in my Making Crafts playlist. So I hope that you enjoyed watching me make the cap for my Peg Bunny doll. And I hope that you have a good day and take care of yourself and those around you. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.